My name's Jennifer, and I'm with the Thrive team, and super excited to be here. We hope you're enjoying the Thrive Summit so far and the experience. And this is our very first digital conference ever. So you guys are part of history here with the Thrive team. So it's very exciting. We are so excited to have you guys here today, joining us for the Fearfully and Wonderfully Made Discovering You through the lens of the Gospel Centered Enneagram Breakout. We would like to introduce you today to Lynette Lynn with Enneagram Coaching Solutions. She is a dear friend of Thrive, and we are thrilled to have her here with us. Thank you, Lynette, for being here. We really appreciate it. We're really excited to have you.
Yes, I am so grateful for this opportunity. And I just want to say welcome to all of you guys. I am so glad that you chose to be here today. I'm sitting at my dining room table, so I'm just pretending you guys are pulling up a chair and sitting with me. It's a little different not doing it, being in a room with you guys, but I'm glad that you made it. You know, we are going to explore the amazing tool of the Enneagram, and I guarantee that it will help you not only discover more about how you're uniquely wired, but also others as well. You know, when we have understanding, we are more likely to to extend compassion, not only to ourselves, but others as well. So that understanding will give us empathy and help us to just see things from other people's view. So I am going to state the obvious right now. 2020 has been an insanely stressful and challenging year already, hasn't it? I mean, we never saw this year coming and all that it would include. And all of us, I think it's safe to say that our stress at times has been very high as we have navigated through this new territory. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I definitely know early on in this pandemic when I was responding to stress in ways that I don't normally do, I remember just thinking, what is wrong with me? And I don't know if you found yourself asking yourself the same thing. And then people in my life where I'm like, what is wrong with them? Why are they responding like that? So whether we're stressed or we're healthy, we see life differently, don't we? And we make our way through the world differently. Psalm 139, 13 and 14 says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." God made each of us uniquely and wonderfully complex and very different from one another, right? I know many times I've heard parents say, why are my kids so different? Like they have the same parents raised in the same environment. Well, they're different because our personalities are different and we see the world differently. Well, when you combined all our unique complexity along with the unique complexity of others, we run into challenges because we don't see and respond to things the same way, do we? Yet each of us was created uniquely to reflect his image. And when we are healthy, we do just that. But when we aren't, we go to the other extreme. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about. So if you're joining me for this breakout, I believe that is because you want to understand yourself better. And you want to be able to understand the people in your life better. Because whether in stress or in the routine of day to day, we as people, we want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be understood. And we want to be known by the people in our life. Well, the Enneagram through the lens of the gospel is a tool that will help you to do just that. You know, many people that I have talked to, and this is true of myself as well, After studying the Enneagram and studying, their types, they have said that they feel like it gives them language to what they instinctively always knew, but didn't feel like they could express themselves. So, what is the Enneagram? I recognize that there are people in this room that are that know a lot about the Enneagram, and for some people, it may be that you don't know anything. So we're going to go over some of the basics. So Ennea means 9, and gram is drawing or diagram. So the Enneagram identifies the 9 vantage points or lenses that each of us see life through. So I don't know if you're a visual learner like me, but I want you to take a look at this diagram, and you see how we have the 9 numbers around the circle. Well, I want you to imagine that the Grand Canyon is in the center of that diagram, okay? And each of us go to one of those 9 points, and we all look down into the Grand Canyon. Now, if we were to answer the question, what did you see when you looked down there? I guarantee you we would all have very different answers. I mean, we're all looking at the Grand Canyon, but we all saw something different. Now, does that mean that me as an Enneagram 8, looking across to, an Enneagram 3, that because I don't see things the way that the 3 does that make them wrong? Well, no, of course it doesn't. It just means that they're seeing something different than I am. So the thing that really caught me that I loved about the Enneagram is it's a very different personality tool than other personality assessments are out there. And here's why. What the Enneagram does is it's looking more at core behavior than it is about not core behavior, core motivations than it does about the behavior itself. A lot of personality assessments that are great too, they're looking at behavior and they're typing people that way. Well, the Enneagram is looking more at the why behind the things that we do. So it's more, you'll hear me talk about the core motivation or the unconscious motivation of the different types, and not so much about behavior. So it's why you do what you do rather than your behavior itself. So each type, as we go over them, you'll see, has a way of thinking and feeling and acting that arises from an unconscious motivation. And because of that, it impacts how we make our way through the world. As you'll see, as we go over the 9 types, there are many of the different types that have similar behaviors. And I'm sure as I start to describe them, you'll be saying, well, I do that, and I do that. One of the common mistypings is between the Enneagram 1 and the Enneagram 6. That's because there are very similar behaviors in each of those. But again, remember, we're looking at what is motivating that behavior. What is the why behind it? So if you're vacillating between 2, really listen as I go and talk about the motivation piece, okay? So the Enneagram describes the best part of us when we're healthy and we're aligned with the gospel and we're reflecting God's image. And it describes the worst part of us when we are misaligned with the gospel, when we're stressed, when we're unhealthy, and also when we're believing false narratives about ourselves or a situation. Each type has a story that they tell themselves. That false narrative is what I'm talking about. So the Enneagram Illuminate is a tool that illuminates the heart's conditions and its motivation. And it helps us to get back on the track to a healthy version of ourselves. My instructor that I got my certification through, Beth McCord, she described the Enneagram as a rumble strip. And I love this analogy. So, on a highway or on a road, especially 2-lane roads, There is the rumble strip that is in the center of the highway and the rumble strip that's on the side of the shoulder. And the purpose of those is that if you start to veer off the road, those rumble strips are loud and they wake you up, right? Well, you can look at the Enneagram like that. As you start to see some of the unhealthy behaviors coming up of your type, let it be what wakes you up and gets you back on the path of the healthiest version of you. So the Enneagram, yes, is a tool that illuminates that heart condition, but here's what I want you to really hear. It is the gospel that transforms the behavior. You know, it's not the Enneagram is the same as the gospel at all. The Enneagram has power because of the gospel being laid on top of it. It is what can cause that transformation to happen. You know, a power tool is only as good as you plug it into a wall. A drill is not going to be any great, you know, is not going to be helpful unless you plug it into its source, right? So the gospel is the source of transformation for the insight that we get from the Enneagram. So I am going to be going over the 9 types and just doing an overview. I only have 45 minutes because we're going to have 15 minutes to answer some questions. So I am only going to be able to scratch the surface in the short amount of time that we have together. But at least it will give you some insight into your type and hopefully cause you to want to, you know, discover more and look more into it. What you're going to hear me describe of each type is the healthy and the unhealthy versions of your Enneagram type. So, and remember, which is your rumble strip, okay? So here's what I want to encourage you. Do not tune out if I'm not talking about your Enneagram type, okay? Because it's easy to only want to listen to your number. But remember, part of the beauty of this tool that we've been given of the Enneagram is that you can understand other people, that you can understand the motivations of other people. I have noticed such a huge difference in my relationships when I see more from their lens why they're acting or behaving a certain way. So please try to be a student of all the types and listen so you can see things from other people's vantage point. Again, the reason to do that is so that we can gain compassion and understanding and empathy for the other types as well. So you may have questions as we go along. So this is what I want you to encourage you to do. You can, down in the chat bar, I think it's in the chat bar, but you can message directly the host, and we'll keep your questions that way. And then at the end, I will answer as many questions as I can. So you guys ready? So of course we are starting with type 1. Type 1, you are known as the improvers. And the way you reflect God is in goodness and rightness. You know, when you are healthy and aligned with the gospel, you're conscientious, you're sensible, you're ethical, you're idealistic, you're self-disciplined, and you are orderly. You know, your superpower is to see what needs correcting when other people would totally overlook it. Not only do you see it, but you feel a personal obligation to correct what isn't right. And you're not just about pointing out the problem. That's what I love about you. You also come along with a solution to the problem, and I love that. So, ones, we love the way you pay attention to the details. We love how you're committed to excellence and how you won't stop until you get it right. But when you are unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, that commitment takes on a whole different difficulty for you, in the sense that it makes it very hard for you to delegate, because the job done right, and you want it done correctly, and you want it done to your standards. So what ends up happening when you're not healthy is you are holding on to those jobs or responsibilities, and then it leaves you resentful because you feel like if you want it done correctly, you have to do it yourself. And not only that, though, what it ends up happening is it leaves people feeling like they will never measure up to your standards. So what is the core or unconscious motivation behind that for you as a 1? Well, it has to do with not wanting to be imperfect or bad or wrong or inappropriate. 1s, you struggle to believe that you are worthy or good enough because you have an inner critic that is constantly accusing you. You know, 1s, it has been with you all your life, so you may not even notice that it's there, or maybe you assume everybody has an inner critic. Well, all the types can be self-critical for sure, but it's not that unrelenting critic that you experience. So 1s, what you do in order to silence that critical voice, you end up being very tough on yourself, and you're striving to always do what is right without making mistakes. So your inner critic is also pointing out the imperfections in others and the world, and you feel obliged to tell others how they can do things better. And this can cause tension in your relationships. For you, you feel like you're just trying to help them to do it better, but that ends up not coming across that way. So 1s, your desire to be right and correct, along with your inner critic, can make it really difficult for you to receive the feedback. Your core weakness, or sometimes you'll hear it called the core sin, is resentment, in the sense that repressing the anger that you feel leads you to continual frustration and dissatisfaction with others, with yourself, with the world for not being perfect. And you don't feel like it's okay to express the anger because anger is inappropriate, is what I've heard a lot of 1s say. So 1s, the false narrative that you believe sounds something like perfection is the standard, so it's not okay to make a mistake. But listen to this truth from Titus 3:4 that covers over that lie, that false narrative. But when the kindness and love of God our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things that we've done, but because of his mercy. So 1's, good news. There is no bad, good, inappropriate deed that will cause him to love you any differently. You're loved not for how good you are or how perfect you are, but because of the finished work of Jesus Christ. Jesus paid the ultimate price for all the imperfection by choosing to die on the cross. That free gift of salvation assures us, I love this, this is the good news, that when God sees us, he sees the righteousness of Jesus on us. Isn't that great news? All right, 2, you guys are known as the helper, and you reflect God's love and his care. When you're healthy and aligned with the gospel, you are warm and kind and genuine and always ready to help, whether a friend or a stranger. You take a genuine interest in others, and you want to help in any way that you can to alleviate pain or discomfort or struggles for people. 2, I'm sure you would agree with me that relationships are a priority for you. You make sure that the people around you always feel loved and cared for. You can sense the feelings in people a lot of times before they even know they're feeling anything. But when you're unhealthy and you're misaligned with the gospel, you struggle to believe that you are loved and wanted by people in your life. You believe that apart from the support and the way you serve them, that you don't have anything else to give. So what is the core or unconscious motivation behind that? Well, it's the fear of being rejected and unwanted. You don't want to be thought of as worthless or insignificant or dispensable. So you feel like in serving others, you're needed and you're wanted and you're appreciated. So twos, your focus of attention is often on the needs and the feelings and the desires of other people. Yet it is hard for you a lot of times twos to identify what you're feeling, what you need, what your desire is. It's difficult for you to express that. So without a doubt, twos, you are the most relational on the Enneagram because relationships are extremely important to you. In fact, it's oftentimes what you're thinking about. You know, you may find yourself evaluating the state of your relationship or a friendship over here or over there. You may find yourself calling them up and going, hey, just checking in, are we okay? You might even find yourself going over and over a conversation that you had in, let's say, the grocery store that didn't go off quite the way you hoped it. Because the part of that for you is because you care so deeply about people, you care what they think about you. And what people think of you impacts what you think of you. So for twos, your core weakness or core sin is one of pride, in the sense that you're not willing to ask for help. And part of that has to do with that fear of rejection, or you don't want to be seen as too needy. The false narrative that you believe twos is some sort of, it's not okay to ask for help. But twos, I want you to listen to this truth from Zephaniah 3:17. This truth covers that lie, that false narrative. And it says, the Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. So good news, twos, you are wanted. Jesus left heaven and he laid down his life for you on the cross because you are valued, because you are wanted for who you are, not for what you do. Twos, you're loved, and Jesus demonstrated that by the ultimate act of sacrifice, by sacrificing himself for you. He delights in you, not because of what you do for other people, but just because of who you are as his beloved child. Isn't that great news? All right, threes. Threes, you are known as the achievers, and you reflect God's hope and his radiance. And when you're healthy and aligned with the gospel, you are optimistic, you are accomplished, you're such adaptable people, and you can achieve and excel at anything you put your mind to. Threes, you have an incredible ability to believe that anything is impossible. I mean, anything is possible when a lot of us would think, oh, that's impossible. But threes, you see the impossibilities and you push through those and you do whatever it takes to achieve the goal. Your energy level, threes, is difficult to match. And oftentimes people have a hard time keeping up with you. Threes, you believe that your value is in your success, and you're willing to become whatever the organization or the situation needs you to be in order to be successful. But unfortunately, I think you would agree with me that that has come at a high price at times, a high price to your family, to your relationships, to your physical health, to your emotional health, to your spiritual health. So what is the unconscious motivation behind that drive to be successful? Well, threes, it's that you do not want to fail because you believe that your value is in your successes. So oftentimes what your focus of attention is on tasks and goals, making them, checking them off, making more. And you probably have a really hard time slowing down to celebrate a goal achieved because you're already moving on to the next goal. So this can be difficult, not only for your teammates, but for your family as well, as I'm sure you know. Threes, you are in the feeling center. So what that means is you feel feelings, yours and others, but you will often set those feelings aside because they can slow you down from what needs to get accomplished. You might also find it difficult to put people before tasks. You know, this may look like walking into the office and you've got a goal and something in mind and you walk past everybody, not saying hello or good morning because you're so focused on the goal. So if you can relate to that, you may be a three. So threes, your weakness or your core sin is deceit. And that's in the sense of you believe you are the image that you project. You know, your drivenness to be whatever others need you to be can lead you to to forget the core of who you are in Christ because you believe you are whatever that image is you need to be or whatever that situation needs you to be. So threes, the false narrative that you believe is some form of it's not okay to fail. But would you listen to this truth from Matthew 11:28 through 30 that covers that lie. And it says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Good news, threes. You are loved by the Father simply for being yourself, not for the image you project. He wants you to rest in his love and not focus on what other people think about you. You are seen and you are valued. God values you so much that he sent his perfect son to die for all your shortcomings. And he cherishes you, the real you. So threes, find rest in that. All right. Now we are moving on to fours. Fours, you are known as the romantic individualist, and you reflect God's creativity and his depth. When you're aligned and healthy, fours, you bring a unique beauty, depth, and creativity to the world around you. You take time to smell the roses when the rest of us don't, and we love that about you. Fours, you have the ability to go deep in the things that matter, and you're able to sit in hard feelings, not just yours, but other people's, and you don't feel the need to go in and fix it. You'll go into the painful places and sit with people, and where others would just move on to the next task. We love that about you, fours. Fours, your creativity and your transparency and your say it like it is can be a breath of fresh air. Because honesty and authenticity are your core values, if people don't share those same values, basically they become invisible to you. Now, when you are unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, you become very inward focused and you want people to see you as special and unique. And the unconscious motivation behind that desire is that you innately feel like something is missing, flawed, or defective in you. Fourth, your hope is your uniqueness will cover what you feel like is missing. And you know that you struggle with shame and abandonment issues more than the other types do. So what happens is that often leads you to push-pull in your relationship, where you draw people in, but when they get too close, you push them away, in hopes that if you push them away, they won't abandon you first. So fourth, you are comfortable and you get your energy from embracing your feelings. A good tearjerker movie that allows you to embrace the melancholy can be so comforting for your soul. It's a place that you enjoy being as long as you don't stay there too long. Melancholy is not depression. Melancholy is just melancholy. So, fourth, your core weakness is envy, in the sense that you compare yourself to others, feeling like you have some essential quality missing in you because you have felt like you never quite fit in the world the way other people do. Fourth, the false narrative you believe is some form of what is missing in me keeps me from being seen. Fourth, would you listen to this truth from Psalm 139, 13 and 14 that covers that lie? It says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." So good news, for Christ sees your uniqueness and the way you reflect him in a distinct and beautiful way. He also sees your sadness and your emptiness too. And he came to rescue you from the needs that were too big for you to bear on your own. You are understood by him, even though you often feel like you are misunderstood and different from everyone else. All right, fives, are you ready? Fives, you are known as the investigators, and you reflect God's wisdom and his truth. When you're healthy and you're aligned with the gospel, you are excellent visionaries. You have a unique insight into things that other people cannot see. You take in information from many sources, and when you're healthy, you're willing to share those insights with other people. So your quest to gather knowledge and information can be used as a gift for other people or as a defense mechanism to protect yourself. And the unconscious motivation behind that is you do not want to feel incompetent, inadequate, or ignorant. And knowledge gives you that sense of control. So when you're unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, you may find yourself concerned that you will not have the energy to do everything that life requires of you. So every interaction, every task, everything takes energy from that allotted reserve you have for each day. And when you run out, you're done. And you need time alone to build up your reserve. Am I right? All right, so your focus of attention, fives, is not on what feels right, but what makes sense. Fives, you have feelings. You definitely feel feelings, but you often don't pay attention to them because feelings aren't logical, right? You desire predictability and self-control, and feelings do not fit in with that plan. So you would rather observe than participate. You will often be the last one around a work table to speak up because you're gathering information and you want to feel prepared before you speak. And so often, 5, when you do wait till the last, the last person to speak, what you say is so insightful that it's kind of like drop the mic and the meeting's over. So 5, the false narrative you believe is, I am strong and I don't need help or comfort from others. 5s, would you listen to this truth from Isaiah 40:31? But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Good news, 5s. Your needs are seen and taken care of, and you do not need to worry that your resources are going to run out. If Jesus is your Lord and Savior, then he lives in you, and he will be the strength you need when you feel like you have nothing left to give. He knows your need for solitude to recharge. So go to him in those times and allow him to restore your soul as only he can do. All right. 6s, you are known as the Loyalist. And the way you reflect God's image is by his faithfulness and courage. 6s, when you are healthy and aligned with the gospel, you have an incredible ability to draw people together. You make us laugh with your great sense of humor and your playfulness. We love when you're in the room. And you have such a strong work ethic and loyalty. The strong work ethic and loyalty and your desire to be a team player makes you a joy to have on every team. In fact, I think every team needs a 6. So 6s, I know you know this is true. It is important to you to follow rules and procedures and plans. And oftentimes, 6s, you will align yourself with a strong leader or strong personality as a means of support and safety. So what's the unconscious motivation behind that? Well, the reason why you do this is because you do not want to ever feel like you're without help or support or guidance. And you certainly do not want to do anything that's going to get you in trouble. Am I right? Well, when you're unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, you often doubt yourself and your decisions. So you look to other people for reassurance. I mean, you make the decision, but then you go to your trusted sources to affirm that decision that you've made, because you want to make sure you made the right decision, because the bottom line is you don't trust yourself. So 6s, your focus of attention is on what could go wrong. You have worst case scenario thinking, and it's a means of control for you. Meaning, if you can think through all the possibilities, then you believe that you will be prepared for whatever happens. You want the predictability and you want the certainty, but the reality is you never quite get it. So oftentimes your worst case scenario thinking never came to be, except maybe in a pandemic. All right, so 6s, you ask a lot of questions because you want to think through every possible angle to avoid trouble. And not only that, it's really important to you that you see things in context, which can be a strength and it can be a weakness as well. Strength in the sense of we can count on you to think through things that we wouldn't have, but a weakness in the sense that it can cause analysis paralysis, where you get stuck in your thoughts so much that you can't even move forward with what needs to be done. So sixes, the false narrative that you believe is that it's not okay to trust yourself. But sixes, listen to this truth from Deuteronomy 31:6 that covers that lie. So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic, for the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will never fail you nor abandon you. Isn't that great? So sixes, good news. You are safe and secure because he is always with you. He is an all-powerful Father who loves and protects his children. You may feel like you need protection from uncertainty, but he wants you instead to believe that he is in control of everything. Therefore, you can be strong, you can be courageous, you can trust yourself, because the Holy Spirit will give you the peace, the clarity, and the wisdom and the assurance when you need it. Isn't that great news? All right, sevens. If you guys all had your mics on and you were a seven, you'd be screaming right about now, because sevens are known as the enthusiasts. You reflect God's joy and his abundance. And when you are healthy and you're aligned with the gospel, you bring joy and fun into any room that you walk in. Your enthusiasm for life and your desire for adventure is contagious to those around you. I mean, you have a gratitude for life and the people around you that is unmatched to others. And people feel that. Sevens, I am pretty sure that you are the creators of Fomo. You do not want to miss out on anything, whether it's a conversation or an experience. Even if you're in the middle of a conversation and an experience, you don't want to miss out. So, what is the unconscious motivation of FOMO? It has to do with not wanting to be deprived or trapped in what is uncomfortable or painful. Sevens, I can only imagine what a struggle the quarantine was for you at times, because the fact was we were all pretty trapped, weren't we? And you couldn't get away from that. And you weren't around a lot of people. And that's part of what feeds your soul, is being around other people and doing lots of things. So sevens, you have a need to be happy, satisfied, and content. You are masters at reframing the negative or an uncomfortable situation into something that's positive and that can be seen as a strength. But here's the thing, you guys. While that is great, reframing is great. It always is good to look on the positive side of things. The weakness side of that is when you are never dealing with the hard things or willing to deal and sit in the pain. What I have seen with sevens is when they crash harder than others, because they have been running and moving for so fast for so long that when they hit that wall, they hit it hard, and it takes them a while to recover from it. So when you're unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, your focus of attention is what's next. And you're often looking for the next thrill while you're in the middle of the current one. So anticipation is an energy that you long for. And if possible, you would want to have it all of the time. And because of that, you're often chasing the next shiny thing, and you're multitasking while you do it. You know, sevens, texting must be the ultimate for you, because you can have 10 different conversations on your phone and be chatting with this person in the room with you. So I'm sure you love that. So sevens, your core weakness or sin is gluttony. Now, in the sense of, you think of gluttony, you think of food, but in this case, it's more of gluttony for whatever is pleasant. And you have an insatiable desire to experience more. So the false narrative that sevens you believe is some form of It's not okay to depend on anybody. But listen to this truth from John 4:14 that covers that lie. For whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never thirst again. The water that I give him will become a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So good news, sevens. Complete satisfaction and contentment are available to you in Jesus Christ. He wants to satisfy your insatiable thirst for more with the living water that can quench your very deepest thirst. So rather than avoiding the difficult and painful things in life, choose to allow him to be your comforter by leaning into him and allowing him to meet you in the discomfort. All right, eights. Eights, you are known as the challengers, and you reflect God's power and his protection. When you're healthy and you're aligned with the gospel, you present strength and boldness to the people around you. Your desire to protect those that are being mistreated or those who cannot take care of themselves brings such a sense of security to people. You are willing to speak up and challenge the status quo when nobody else is willing to do that. And people appreciate that about you, eights. So eights, you will fully trust very few people throughout the course of your life. Am I right? And part of that is because you don't want to set yourself up to be betrayed. Eights, you will not put yourself in a position of weakness or powerlessness because it leads you to feeling vulnerable. What's the unconscious motivation behind that? Well, it's your need to protect yourself from being weak, feeling powerless, and being betrayed by others. If you believe, and we believe, I can say that because I'm an eight, that if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you believe someone may leverage that against you at a later time. So your tough exterior is a means of protecting yourself, yet you have such a tender heart, especially towards the hurting and the marginalized. When you're unhealthy, and misaligned with the gospel, you tend to be very much a dualistic thinker. So you're either for me or against me. You're either good or bad. You're either a friend or an enemy. It's either right or it's wrong. And you're either in or you're out. And what you rely on is what your gut tells you. So eights, your focus of attention is to not be controlled by others. You're independent thinkers, and you don't need to be in control all the time, but what you don't want is to be controlled or micromanaged by other people. So for eights, your weakness is lust in the sense of your desire for intensity. You push everything to the limit because intensity in your conversations, the intensity, even conflict brings you that sense of familiarity. So for eights, you are either 100% in or you're not. So for eights, the go big and go home, I'm sure was created by an eight, probably who lived in Texas, I would say. So the false narrative eights believe is some form of it's not okay to be weak, vulnerable, or depend on other people. But listen to this truth from 2 Corinthians 12:9 that covers that lie. Each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me." So good news, eights. You are weak but he is strong and he's protective. Christ will never leave you, betray you, or forsake you. He promises you that in your weakness, his strength will be made perfect. Yet there's a contingency. You have to be willing to admit your weakness in exchange for his strength. You are his beloved child, and you must choose to believe that you are safe and protected for eternity because of Christ's finished work on the cross. All right, 9s, last but definitely not least. 9s, you are known as the Peacemaker. You reflect God's peace and oneness. And when you are healthy, and aligned with the gospel, you bring such a calm and peaceful presence into your environment, any environment that you are a part of. You can be exceptionally gentle and kind and caring to those around you. 9s, you have the ability to see all things from all angles. So what happens is people often come to you, and because you see all angles, but you rarely take sides. That's what makes you 9s a great mediator because of that. 9s, you will go to great extent to avoid conflict, whether they're directly or indirectly. So what's the conscious motivation behind that? Well, it's a fear of being shut out from people's lives. You desire to maintain connection with people, so you're willing to do whatever is needed to keep the peace. When you're unhealthy and misaligned with the gospel, you want as much as possible to be unaffected by life. You want to feel comfortable all the time, and you want other people to feel comfortable all the time. So your focus of attention is on keeping the peace. And you do that by merging with other people's agendas. 9s, while you will go along to get along, that doesn't mean that you like it. You get angry, yes you do, even though you shove it down. And a lot of times when you're angry, it comes out in passive aggressive ways. So people, yes, you're going along to get along, but people know that you don't necessarily love going along to get along. 9s, it can take a long time for you to make a decision, say like about where to go on vacation or where to go to eat or how to plan a party or those kind of things that impact people. And a lot of that has to do with you feel such a pressure to make everybody happy. And we know that's pretty much impossible, right? So it can take a long time for decision making. 9s, your core weakness is sloth, but it's not in the sense of being lazy. You're busy and you do a lot, but sloth in the sense that you don't bring your full self to life. And part of that has to do with believing on some level that your presence doesn't matter. So you show up, you're physically there, but a lot of times you're emotionally checked out or you're just somewhere else. So the false narrative that you believe is my presence doesn't matter and it's not okay to assert yourself. But listen to this truth from Ephesians 2:10 that covers that lie. It says, for you are God's masterpiece. He has created you anew in Christ Jesus, so you can do the good things he had planned for you long ago. Good news, 9s, you matter to him, so much so that he sent his son to die for you. He wants you to know that your presence matters in every single person's life that he has put you in. He is calling you to wake up, to show up, and to bless the world with your full presence. And God has given you the unique ability to see all the viewpoints and to mediate situations in ways others can't. So he needs your voice. So 9s, speak up. All right, we did it. We did all 9 types. So before we get on to questions, I just want to caution you guys on a few things. One is, it's so easy, and this is what I did, I made this mistake, is when I first heard about the Enneagram and I learned about myself, I started typing other people. I'm like, oh, you must be a 4 and you must be a 3. And I told them that, which is a huge mistake. I later discovered that we can't type somebody else because yes, we see their behaviors. Yes, we hear what comes out of their mouth, but we don't know the core motivations. We don't know what's going on inside of them. So when we type somebody, we are robbing them of the journey of discovering their own type. So please don't do that. In your mind, I guarantee in your mind, you're going to be thinking, oh, that person's a 2 and they're a 3 and they're a 5. What I would encourage you to do, rather than telling them what they are, is ask them, do they know what their Enneagram number is? And if they don't, then, you know, you can lead them to finding it. And I will talk about that in a couple minutes. Also, I wanted to point out that the Enneagram is not to be used as a weapon or as a shield. And when I say a weapon, I mean using someone's Enneagram type against them. So it would be like, oh, you're just being such a 1 right now by doing that. Insert the eye roll here. Or, well, I'm an 8. That's just how I am. Put up with it. So we're using the Enneagram as a means of growth. It is never meant to be used to harm somebody. One more thing I want to mention is we do have a handout for you. If you do not know what your Enneagram type is, we are going to make that available to you. I don't know if we're putting it in the chat or what, but we'll find that out before the end. Maybe, Jennifer, you can tell me how we're making that available to you.
Yes,
All
we'll
right,
be putting that in the chat.
We're putting that in the chat. Great. So now we have time for a few questions. Let me go to my messages. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. This person asks, I have taken the Enneagram 3 times and I have gotten different results each time. I know it is a core motive, but could you give me some tips on how to clarify the core motivation? That is such a great question. Now, taking it 3 different times and getting different results can make sense, especially depending on the frame of mind you are when you took it. Someone taking the Enneagram for the first time during the pandemic might have gotten a real different result because you took it in a moment of stress. So looking at, there is actually, if you look at the assessment, and the one that I really feel like is the most valid is through the Enneagram Institute. If you go there, it's $12, but it really is quite reliable, and it will give you your rundown according to like percentages. So how to clarify your core motivation is really the question. What I recommend with people I work with is take those 3 types and try each one of those on for a week at a time. So try on the core motivation. Let's say you are struggling between a 1 and a 6. The core motivation for the 1 is again, not to be bad, wrong, you know, inappropriate. So, but for a 6, they experience a lot of those things too. But remember, the core motivation for a 6 is that they want to feel secure and they don't want to get in trouble. Okay. So try on the 1 for a week and start asking yourself questions, journaling. Okay, why did I just feel like I needed to do this that way? And why did I respond to this person in that way? And try them on as you would a pair of shoes. And do not stop on your type until you know that it's your type. Because what you don't want to do, just like you don't want to buy a pair of shoes that doesn't fit, you don't want to say, okay, well, I guess that's my type. Because if it doesn't fit, you're not going to use it for growth, okay? So someone asks, how does an 8 develop the ability to be vulnerable? Wow, that is a great question, and I can personally answer that myself, because vulnerability is something that is really been a struggle for me in the past. And part of that is understanding that false narrative that you're telling yourself. You're telling yourself it's not okay to be vulnerable because of that fear that it's going to come back on you later, or people are going to think you're weak. So the way that I grew in this area the most is I found a couple friends and my husband that I felt like I could tell them the deepest, darkest junk in me, and then be okay with allowing them to know that and seeing that it was still safe, that it didn't come back on me. So really the way to develop that is to begin to have those conversations with those safe people in your world. So one person asked the question, I am definitely more than one of these. What does that say about me? And that is true. When I read the types, I'm thinking, wow, I really sound like that. And I sound like this too. So you will, again, identify with different types. What we did tonight, we just barely scratched the surface of this. But there is ways to go deeper to begin to figure out, if you have more than one type, sometimes the type to your left and to your right. So for me as an 8, being a 7, on the side of me is a 7 and on the other side of me is a 9. So there's times I can look like a 7 or I can look like a 9, but again, it goes back to that core motivation. So I would say that what it says about you is you just need to dive in and really start learning what you can about the different types until finally that shoe fits. Just in case I forget to tell you this, one of the best books that I would suggest you start with it's called The Road Back to You by Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile. Yes, Jill Stokes is putting the book up there right now. The Road Back to You brings it to the very basic level, and it also really goes through the different types, and it's a great place to start. The other one I would highly recommend, it's called Self to Lose, Self to Find. And that is, while The Road Back to You is definitely faith-based, Self to Lose, Self to Find is more of a biblical view of the 9 types. And the author of that is Marilyn Vansel. Great, great book. Both of them are wonderful. So how do you understand and read the wing numbers? So real briefly, again, your wings are the numbers that are on the side, both sides of you. So you can look at your wings like, if you have eggs, do you like to put a lot of salt, or do you like to put a lot of pepper, or do you like to put salt and pepper? Wings are really what brings the flavor to your core type. So for me, I tap into that 7 when I need to be more enthusiastic and energetic. I know I have that 7 on the side of me that I can tap into the characteristics, but you will never become your wings, okay? That's what I want you to know. Your core number is your core number. Someone asked, after reading the beginner books and listening to the podcasts and classes like this, what is the next step to getting deeper into the Enneagram? Is there something between this and becoming an Enneagram coach or something? Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I found myself in that place as well, and wanting something more, wanting somebody to walk me through the process of growing. And there are, for instance, I am a certified Enneagram coach. And what that means is I work with the individuals, and I take people through, it's called Exploring Your Type. And we meet for 5 different sessions, and we just walk through your Enneagram type, and we use real life things that are happening in your life that you're bringing to the table that we can talk through and explore. So you can, connect with an Enneagram coach. You can go to my website, which is Enneagram Coaching Solutions. And the other thing, I also work with teams. I love, one of my favorite things to do is go into people's workplaces and sit down with teams and work through and help them to understand each other and understand their numbers and all of that. So thank you for asking that question, Erica. Jeff says, wow, I see myself in all of them. Is that normal? Yes, I think we kind of hit on that. That is something, it's normal, because it's tempting to look at the behaviors. Now, remember, you will see yourself in all of the types, but again, look at the core motivations. So if a couple sound like me, how do I figure out which one is me? Again, try it on for a week. Just focus on what is the core motivations, what's leading you to do what you do. All right. This one says, how do you lead from the middle of the pack as a 2? The only 2 on a team of 3s and 8s, and throw in a 5 in there. So 2s, as a pack of 2s with 3s and 8s, so 3s and 8s, as you, Darlene, they are in what they call the aggressive stance. So they tend to be the ones that are going to lead and push through. 2s, you share a line with 8, so you also have that sense of wanting to lead as well. What I would suggest, especially for 8s, Darlene, is we want to know what you're feeling. So 8s will push you, 3s will push you, but they also very much appreciate the pushback. So they want you to match their energy and match their power. I hope that helps. And I see that we did add the discovering your type in the chat. So Demi says, this is all new to me. A couple of them resonated with me, but any thoughts on how to differentiate? What area is the most important? Demi, I don't know if you have taken the assessment yet, but I would definitely suggest, starting with the assessment on the Enneagram Institute, and I have no affiliation with them, so I don't get any cuts on that. But start there and read through your top 3 descriptions and see which resonates with you the most. I would say really take a look at the core fear for each type and what the core desire is. And you can find more of that on either on our website, Enneagram Coaching Solutions, or on the Enneagram Institute. Somebody is asking, can someone be more than one type? No, I'm so glad you asked that question. You have one core type, and you are that core type from a child until you die. Now, you can take on, you can take on those wings that are on either side, but your core type is your core type. So you may resonate with other numbers, and there's a whole, we've only scratched the surface, but there's a whole nother thing called tri-types that's super interesting as well. But you have one core type. Rhonda's asking, there are a lot of quizzes. What quiz do you recommend? So there are two different ones that I would recommend. The Enneagram Institute is a great one. And like I said, it's $12. The other assessment I would recommend is by my instructor, actually, through yourenneagramcoach.com. And that quiz is actually a free quiz as well. So I would stick with those two. The ones that, you know, are one, you know, 2 or 3 questions, I would stay away from. You know, this isn't a party game. This is learning more about ourselves. So I've heard of the Enneagram. What are great resources? I think I answered that with the road back to you. Becky Park also said Richard Rohr's book on the Enneagram is excellent, which is true. Gosh, I have a couple of his. I can't remember the one, but there's one that is the Christian perspective that Richard Rohr wrote, which is excellent. It's very, very deep. Can we post the book references for us? We can do that? Oh, we did do that. That's great. The core motivations of the Loyalist. I'm going to have you go back and listen to that. But in a nutshell, the core motivations for Loyalists is that they want to feel safe, secure, and they don't want to get in trouble. Okay. Amanda said Enneagram and coffee and social Enneagram on Instagram are also great. And hey, I would like to tell you that we are also on Instagram and we have a lot of great information. You can follow us at EnneagramCoachingSolutions.com. All right. So once I know my type, how can it help me? It will definitely open you. I would say the best way that it helps you is it helps you to understand your triggers. So when you're feeling those feelings come up, it starts to help you understand why you're responding the way you do. And again, going back to that rumble strip in the road, it'll help you to stay on track, to know when you're not being healthy. All right. Let me see if there's anything else. I got type 2 and a type 9 with a similar percentage. What does it mean? Which one is a core type? Well, all 9 numbers are core types. It's very common for 2s and 9s to be misidentified or to get the same percentage. You know, on the Enneagram Institute, you guys, this is a great resource if you're struggling between 2 types. They have a drop-down tab that says misidentifications. So it'll actually show you like a 2 and a 9 and ask you some pretty specific questions that will also help you nail down your type. All right. Would you say that a 2 also deals with shame, and that ties into their fear that they are unworthy of being loved by anyone because of their past? And any tips for a single 2? 2, that shame is very much a feeling that that 2s deal with very often. Those 2s, 3s, and 4s are actually in that triad that deal with shame as well. A lot of what we have to remember as we're walking through this and using the Enneagram to grow is that we want to replace those false narratives. So when those false narratives are coming in and they're saying whatever the message is you hear as far as shame, is knowing what God's truth says for you, because that is the power of the gospel. When I was talking about that in the beginning, the Enneagram is an amazing tool, but without the power of the gospel, it's just another tool that's out there. So what the Enneagram does is it helps us to identify, like for you, that you deal with shame, you deal with feeling unworthy and not feeling lovable. Well, what does the gospel say about that? So when those messages come in, what is the truth that's going to change that? So when you're feeling that, you're going down the road, you're feeling pretty healthy, and then all of a sudden you start moving into feeling unloved, feeling shameful. That's when you're like, okay, wait. I need to get back on the road to health. That is not truth. That is not truth. This is truth. And now you're moving back to that redeemed self, that healthy self that God intends for you. All right. Well, Eric Williams wants to know why 7s are the best. Any 7s there? Raise your hand. And then another 7 agrees with him, says they're pretty amazing. 7s are a lot of fun to be around. And for whatever reason, I've noticed that they're also youth pastors. Isn't that amazing? All right. You guys, this has been so great. If you would like to connect with me, again, you can go to my website. You'll find my email there. If there are questions I didn't answer, go ahead and email them to me, and I would love to answer them. Thank you for being so kind and patient and being here. God bless you guys.